everybody. Happy Monday morning. Hope you guys had a good Easter weekend. We had gorgeous weather and now it's snowing. Show everybody. Look at this. We've got snow. Just crazy weather. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be doing tuna patties. And tuna patties were something that my mom always kept in the pantry. We lived in Ohio for several years when I was growing up. We had blizzards, and tuna will live a long time on a shelf. So it was a great thing to have so that you had something to turn to that had protein, is pretty healthy, and is incredibly versatile. So what we're going to make today is something very similar to the way you would make a crab cake. So it can be used even like a burger patty. If you want to have it as a sandwich, or you can have it on a plate as the main dish, or you can even have it as a snack. So let's get started. And if you're cooking with me, the main ingredients that you need to have, and everything else is really kind of flexible, is tuna, eggs, a little bit of mayonnaise, pickles or something tart like that, and some type of breading to hold them together. So you can either use breadcrumbs. I'm actually going to use pureed stuffing from Thanksgiving that I have had in the freezer, and that I put all of the stuffing in there, put it in the blender, and then put it in the freezer. So now I can use it as breading since I'm kind of low on breadcrumbs. But if you have old bread, one of the best things that you can do is go ahead and put it in out in the open and let it completely dry out, and then put it in the blender. And then once it's all fine, you can stick it in a baggie and you can stick it in the freezer, and you have breadcrumbs instead of throwing away old bread. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and take the lids off of the tuna. This tuna is packed in oil, not because I like it, but because that was all there was. And I was excited to find that on the shelf. So I normally buy the tuna that's packed in water simply because it's less calories, but it's also, it doesn't carry any extra flavor that you kind of get from the oil. So we've already taken the lids off of these, and I'm gonna make this two different ways so that you guys can see a couple of options. So we're gonna take it and we're going to drain each of the cans just by pushing down on them. If you have an aversion to getting your hands dirty, you can put this in a sieve and let it sit, but it'll take you forever. So I always just go ahead and push down. And I'm losing a little bit of meat down there, but not that much. No more than if you put it in a sieve and shove it through. Got one more to go. And as you can tell, the dog is incredibly excited because he thinks he's going to get some crumbs anytime I'm working over the sink. I think that's a sign I'm a messy cook. So here we go. Now what you want to do is wash all that oil off of your hands, just so it doesn't get on everything else. And rinse that sink a little bit so that smell goes away, because tuna is so strong. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and get started. Since I'm making this two different ways, I'm going to put two of my cans in each of the bowls, just so you can get an idea of the difference in how you make it depending on what kind of breading you use. So we have that. Now let's get one more in this bowl. Woo! Okay, here we go. we've got that. I'm going to dump this one in. One of the things, if you don't have tuna, when I was at Costco, right before we ended up on our stay-at-home orders, they had canned salmon. So if you ended up with some canned salmon because that's all there was at Costco, this is a perfect recipe to be able to make salmon patties. And for this, I don't use a recipe because it's a lot by feel. How wet is the final product, and that'll determine what you want to put in it as far as the amount of breading, how many eggs. It'll also depend on how much, if you had 1 or 2 eggs that you put in it. All of those things. It's more of a liquid to dry ingredient ratio than it is an actual recipe. Okay, so now we have all of our tuna put in here. I'm gonna grab dry my hands. And the first thing we're going to want to put is the tart. Whatever you're putting in it that's going to be kind of the tart, bitter taste. If you have capers, capers are perfect. Just make sure they're drained and you can dump the bottle in once it's drained. I like to use dill pickles, but anything that's like that you can use just to give it that nice little crunch and bite. So we're going to take and open that. We're going to grab a knife. And as you notice, I'm not really careful about making sure these are really drained, because it's just a little bit more liquid that's going to end up in the bowl, and that just means I'm going to change the ratio just a little bit more of how much liquid, how much dried ingredients I put in. So because these pickles are kind of big, we're going to go ahead and slice them into thirds, and then we're going to take and cut those all the way across, watching your fingers to make sure that you don't add some finger in there. That does not feel good. So now we have that. And then we're going to leave this separate because I'm making different kinds. But if you're putting it all together, you'll go ahead and just dump it all in one bowl. So now we have this chopped up. And the size of pickle chopped that you want is really how big of a bite do you want in your mouth when you taste the tuna patty. If you like a big bite, then leave them kind of big like this. If you want them really, really fine, you can chop them up a lot finer. It's more about taste. So we're going to take and put one of the pickles in this guy and the other one over here. If you have onions, this is a great time to put onions in. I am completely out of onion. So when I was at the grocery store last time, there were no onions. And the ones that were there were really bad, so I didn't buy them. So not going to have onions today, which means I'll put other dried herbs that will give it more of that pungent flavor that onion would. So now that we have the pickle in, the next step is whether you want something different in it. I'm going to put green chili in one of these because I like the bite, and because I don't have onions, then this will give it a little bit of that tang that you would get. So a lot of times when I'm cooking, I'll just use the liquid.
You disconnected, I'm trying to reconnect.
Oh, okay. Is it reconnected? So one of the things I would strongly advise, I learned early on, don't run your fingers around the edges of a can because that's a sharp baby in there. So what you want to do is always take that, or if you are using your fingers, put it in and pull it out, but don't run it around or you'll end up slicing your finger. So now that we have this in here, we want to toss it with the tuna to get it mixed in. The reason you do this first before you add any other liquid is because this will help determine how juicy and wet this is and whether you want to use 1 or 2 eggs. Now I am a huge fan of not using any more dishes than I have to because I don't like to do dishes. So when I put in the egg, I'm going to show you what I do. We're going to use 1 egg each. So we're going to drop that in. So if you're making this at home and you used 4 large cans, you're going to want to use 2 eggs. But there's no need whatsoever for you to get a separate bowl, beat the egg, and then pour the beaten egg in. There's no reason why you can't take and beat the egg right down here. Can you see that? See how I didn't really mix in any of the tuna, but I still got the egg beaten? So there was no need to add it in. So now you have that, but we're also going to add our mayonnaise right now. So I'm going to rinse my hands before I touch the mayonnaise, just so I don't mess up the bottle. And now we're going to add mayonnaise. We're going to take and just squeeze some in, probably about 1/4 cup. There you go. There. And now we'll stir that together. We'll stir it in with the egg first. Like that. One of the other things that you can put in your tuna to give it an interesting little bite is a little bit of soy sauce. So let's get some of that. And we'll grab the soy sauce. I'm going to stick a little bit on top, maybe a tablespoon, probably more like 1/2 tablespoon. And we're going to stir that in as well. Get it blended in. And if you're using it and you put the soy sauce in, you'll smell it. It smells so amazing. There's something about that it just changes the whole flavor. So now we have that in. Now we're going to put just a touch of lemon juice to cut the tuna taste, actually. The lemon juice will help the tuna not be so strong. So we're going to stick a little bit of that in there. Maybe about a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half. We're going to stir that in. And as you notice, I'm still using the same one bowl, but I'm not folding all the way into the rest of the ingredients. And as you can tell, I didn't drain this one nearly as good. So see how much more wet it is than this one? This one has a lot more texture still in the liquid ingredients. This one's very runny. So this one I know is going to need more breading. Okay, so here is the ground up dressing that I've had in the freezer that I'm going to use up today. And as you can see the little cranberries that have been ground up and all of the different kinds of, I had cornbread and I had sourdough bread and there's Parmesan cheese in there. So I'm going to dump some of that in here. And because this already has a lot of herbs and spices, I'm not going to put a lot more in. If you notice, I didn't use it all. Now I'm going to stir everything together. And the goal is to get this thick enough that you can pick it up and make a patty without it just completely sticking all over your fingers. Because then you're going to put it in the skillet and cook it very quickly. So this is still pretty wet. So it looks like it's going to need some more. So we're going to dump the rest in. You can always add more. Once it's too dry, then you're having to try to sit and fix it with more lemon juice or more mayonnaise, and it kills the flavor. So go easy on the breading at first. So now see, as you can tell, it's starting to hold up a little bit better as I stir them together. There those are. Okay, so now we're going to move over to this guy. This one doesn't need quite as much liquid in it, but it does need more herbs and spices because there's none that's going to be in the breadcrumbs. One of the things that I like to use is garlic salt, because it gives you the salt, but it also gives you some flavor of garlic. So we're gonna put about a teaspoon of garlic salt in there. But then I'm gonna add pizza seasoning, mainly because it's a lovely blend of onions, bell peppers, fennel seed, what does it have? Oregano, basil. So it has all the things that I really would have wanted to put in there, but that I didn't have separately. So we're gonna stick some in there, probably about a tablespoon, and then we'll go ahead and stir that together. We're gonna mix those together. We're gonna get it in the liquid ingredients first. Make sure that's kind of blended together. And now we're gonna fold in all of the tuna and get it blended all together. So now, as you can see, all of the liquid ingredients and the tuna are getting mixed to where they're nice and blended. And as you can tell, this one's a lot drier even now than the other one was, just because I was able to get a little bit more of the oil off. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take some Parmesan cheese. You can use cheddar cheese, goat cheese, no cheese, really doesn't matter. We're gonna put some in there. I like it because it helps it blend and stay together. The cheese kind of holds the breading and the tuna together when you fry it. And it gives it a nice sharp taste if you use a white sharp cheese like Parmesan. So now that's mixed in as well. There we go. And now we're going to go ahead and just add the regular breadcrumbs. And hopefully I have enough to make these guys stick together. If not, I'm going to be doing what you do if you have no breadcrumbs. Then you're going to crush saltine crackers and you're going to use that, because it'll work just as well. It just has a little bit different taste and a little bit different texture, but it'll definitely work. So now I'm going to use the breadcrumbs. We'll see how these guys go. I'm going to blend it in, folding it. Now when it comes to frying, it's good to use a really heavy skillet simply because it holds the heat at a more even heat than if you have a really thin skillet. But use what you have. Just know that you're going to have to manage the heat a little bit better if your pan is a little bit thinner. I love cooking with my cast iron. It also leaches a little bit of the iron into the food, so it's a good dose of iron for your family. So as you can see, that's pretty thick. I'm not going to add all of the breadcrumbs because I think that's enough. We'll know when we start to cook the first one. So let's go to the stove and let's get it hot over here. So we're going to turn the skillet on. We'll leave that off for a while. And we're going to let the skillet get a little bit hot. Now, if you didn't get a lot of cooking oil before you went on stay at home, there's a couple of things that you can do. You can either use butter, or if you have bacon or sausage that you've been making for breakfast, save the oil that's from the bacon or sausage, and it's rendered fat. It will work the same as an oil would, and it'll actually give it an incredible flavor because it's bacon fat. So that's what we're going to use today. Is a little bit of bacon fat, enough to cover the bottom. And then we're going to get a paper towel. On a plate to put them on when they're cooked so that they can drain a little bit. So how do you know when it's finally time to go ahead and start putting the tuna patty into the oil? as you can see, it's still kind of just a cold liquid at the moment, but there's just a tiny bit of bubbling that you can see on the edges, and there's starting to be some more movement around here. Once the oil has started to really move around the pan, then it's hot enough that whatever you put in it, it's going to cook and not just absorb the fat. And the reason you want to wait till it's hot is because then the food absorbs far less of the fat that you're cooking it in than if it isn't yet at a heat where it cooks it and gets that nice seal on whatever food that you're making. So now we're going to make our first one. Now this is the stuffing tuna patties. So we're going to take it, we're going to get a handful, and you're going to kind of cup it into a ball and then smash it, and then using your thumb, you're going to continue to kind of hug it between your fingers until you end up with a nice round tuna patty. And then you're going to stick it in the oil. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make one of the others so you can see the difference in how they come out. So now this is the one made with breadcrumbs. We're going to do the same process where you hug it. With your thumb, you're shaping it all the way around so that it's nice and round. And then when you hug it down, it's the size and thickness. The thicker it is, the longer it's going to take to cook to get the center hot. So now we're going to put that one down. If you want to, you can salt and pepper them at this point. I normally don't. We're going to put a couple more in. If you don't put enough in your pan, then one of the things that's going to happen is that the oil is going to start smoking because it's not actually cooking something. So the more often you can keep your pan full, the busier it keeps the oil so that it doesn't start smoking up your house. And if it gets too hot, turn the burner down. Okay, so now we're going to stick that one on there. Ah, I got that one too close. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull it over so we have room. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the bottom and see what it looks like. It's getting brown, but it's still complete.
Do that one more time.
Yeah, it's getting pretty brown down there. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the heat down a little bit now, and we're going to flip it. And what I do to flip so that it doesn't smash in there, a lot of times is I'll flip it onto another patty so that it doesn't just land splat into the skillet. Now you can start cooking on that side. So as this one you can see, once they start cooking, this one actually has more of a crisp golden edge than these do. These are made with the stuffing, and so it absorbs the heat a little bit different, and so don't be surprised if using one breading or another ends up changing the look a little bit. The main thing you're looking for is a nice even cook on both sides so that you know that it's completely cooked through, since it has egg and mayonnaise in it. And we are almost ready. Take a look at the other side on this guy. Take a look down there. Not burning yet, so we're going to let it cook a little bit longer. This guy could probably use a little bit of cooking on the other side. Yeah, it definitely needs a little more. Okay, so we're going to turn the skillet around to let those guys get a little bit more of the hotter part of my stove that's over here. Now we have these two. Let's flip this guy again. Now one of the things that you can do if you don't want to cook them this way where they're nice and crisp is you can spray no stick all over a cookie sheet, and you can bake them at 350 for about 30 to 40 minutes. They will not have a nice crisp top or bottom, but they will bake where they're brown. They'll be a little bit gooier, and they won't have as lovely of a difference of texture between the outside and the inside, but it's definitely another way that you can cook them. Part of it also depends on time. This is a faster way to get your meal on the table. So this guy's looking like he's pretty done. So we're gonna go ahead and take him out, put him over here and let him drain for a minute. And yes, I'm using paper towel. I know it's precious, but I also hate eating grease that just sits on a plate. So we're gonna stick that there. Check this side. See, now that one looks nice and dark. This poor guy back here. Let's see. Now I let it cook a little bit too long. See, it's still edible, but it's a little bit black. I let it cook just a little too long there. Okay, so we're gonna get this one out. I'm gonna take this one out. We're gonna let that guy cook just a little bit longer. And now we're gonna make the sauce that'll go on top of the tuna. And it's the easiest sauce you'll ever make. So I like a little bit of bite on my tuna patties. So we're gonna take this last guy off. He's finally ready. Ah. Okay. Get just a little small bowl and use some kind of cream base. You can use mayonnaise, sour cream, plain yogurt. You can even use vanilla yogurt, but you'll have to put a little bit more spices to hide the vanilla flavor. Anything that has a cream base. I have a little bit of sour cream left, so that's what we're going to use. And then if you have salsa, you can use salsa. I'm going to use red chili. As you can see, I just used a little bit. And put about an equal part of the other liquid that you use, either salsa, you can use hot sauce, but don't use an equal part if you're using hot sauce because it's really hot. If you're using red chili, just go ahead and pour it in. There you go. And now what we're going to do is add just a couple of little spices to give it a little bit of flavor and a little bit of lemon juice. So we're going to put in just a tiny bit of pepper. And then I'm going to use, this is a little bit harder to find. I actually have to order it. It's ground oregano, but if you have leaf oregano, it works. And then I'm going to use just a tiny, tiny touch of lemon, just 2 or 3 drops. And now we're going to blend it together. You can make this ahead and just have it covered and sitting in your refrigerator until you're ready to serve. But it doesn't take very long or very much. And now you have a very simple sort of aioli sauce. Not quite, but it works. So now what we're going to do is plate and eat. So let's get a plate. And we're going to grab, so here's the interesting thing. It's very obvious which ones had the Thanksgiving dressing and which had the breadcrumbs. These are the breadcrumbs. Those are the Thanksgiving dressing. So now let's take and plate them up. Put one here. And we're going to pour some aioli sauce over them. And we're going to sprinkle just a little bit more lemon juice over the tuna. Now they're ready to eat. So let's cut it open and take a look at what they came out like. There you go. There's the one that has the dressing. And this is the one that has the breadcrumbs. So as you can see, holds up much nicer. Absorb the liquid better. This one will have more flavor. That one looks prettier. So I hope this was fun for you. Hope you enjoyed it. If you try them out, make a comment on this YouTube channel. Let me know how they turned out. If something didn't work or if you had a question, let me know. I'm doing these videos because I wanted to teach my kids how to make the dishes that they liked growing up. But if I can share them with all of you, I love doing that too. So thanks, and I hope you have a really good week. Bye.